Hi again. Our next speaker is an iOS developer at Telerik. He's a coder, blogger, speaker, and author on various mobile technologies. Michael Crump.
First off, I would like to thank each and every one of you for coming out today, and obviously the organizers for putting on this absolutely incredible conference. Can we give them a hand first? This takes a lot of work to put together. Okay, so the title of the presentation is obviously Enriching the iOS SDK, but also there's kind of a subtitle that we have as well. And that's kind of what our customers ask us to build. So I'll get into that in detail in just a moment. But I'm Michael Crump. Again, I work at Telerik, and I work on pretty much everything that we do that involves mobile platforms. So before we dive into the story, I did want to tell you a little bit about the company, because as I've been here, I've met a lot of people that talked about Telerik and was familiar with Telerik and what we were doing. So we've been known to do a lot of different things, but mobile has been a focus that we've really been pushing on here lately. So obviously there's three massive ways that people are using to write applications: web, hybrid, to native applications. From web applications, we've been building and working on, people typically use responsive web design or mobile optimized web pages. And we've been working with ASP.NET Ajax. We've been working with our Kendo UI framework, which is a framework that consists of HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS3. And then also we've had a hybrid solution. The hybrid solution consisted of App Builder, which would use Apache Cordova, as well as it uses Kendo UI Mobile. Inside of the hybrid solution, there's also other pieces that tie into our native part, which is things such as backend services and analytics. Now, we've added a couple of other features like testing. You can also do prototyping with our hybrid solution, as well as deployment. But you're here for native, and you're here to learn a little bit more about our native offering. So I thought it would be very beneficial if I kind of started this off talking a little bit about what we've done with the native side, and then where we started discovering the beautiful world of iOS. So we've done a lot with the Windows 8 and the Windows Phone space, and we've been venturing out into Android and to iOS over the last 2 years or so. So as I said, we've been doing this for a while, so I don't know if there's anybody in here that's probably even seen the Visual Studio 2013 toolbox, but if you have, then you notice that this is kind of just a standard kind of toolbox. So you have, things like your buttons, and you have, like a text block and text box, and some of the things that you're maybe familiar with, that translates over to Xcode. What we've been doing is we've been extending this. So as you can see, we've added in things like barcodes, calendars, there's charts, data forms, date and time pickers. All of these were things that our customers were asking us to build to extend on to Microsoft's SDK. So with that being said, then came along iOS. And with iOS, it was a brand new world for us. We started around iOS 6 was when we really started diving into the Objective-C world. And from there, we began researching. We began researching what is the pain points for iOS developers. And, we went ahead and we grabbed the coffee, and we grabbed the donuts. Yes, this is actually some donuts. This is the layer of donuts that's needed just in order to start some of the research. And we began doing various types of research, from market research to just our conversations with iOS developers and groups. And then we started having the conversations with just personal interviews with iOS developers, saying, what do you need? What is your pain point? And how can we assist and make it a lot better for you? So the most requested UI component out of everything What would you guess that it would be? What do you think most people building line of business applications or enterprise apps would want? Okay, the chart. I gave it away. So the chart is something that we've seen over and over and over again. And we see that in all sorts of applications, even with a very simple, quick search to Google. We can see that there's various types of charts that's being used out there, and from iPhone applications to iPad. And even here in the bottom, this is actually our app builder application where somebody was using a chart in a hybrid application. So this kind of spans across not only the mobile world, but also the desktop world as well. So we know that there's a need for charts, but we also know that there's a lot of charts that's been created. So just taking a quick look on GitHub, and I just did a quick search on some of the most stars. I kind of evaluate a lot of open source software by the stars. You can see that there's a couple of, there's the first two that's located here have been started, 1,000 times or so. And then there's the bottom two that have been started, the same, similar number of times. But the one thing to keep in mind is that, like with the bottom two, there was this time, and this was obviously April 16th of 2013, while the other two were updated fairly frequently. Now, I wanted to say all of that to say this, that we love open source software, and we love open source software so much that we've even open sourced our Kendo UI core for those of you that have to do some web work on the side as well, maybe even do your personal web page. But just because we've open sourced our internal projects and that our internal guys are contributing and we're building personally our own sort of applications, our own open source software, that doesn't necessarily mean that our clients are going to be able to use it. And so we're used to the mindset of, we have a project that we built, we're excited about it, we want somebody else to use it, but sometimes we have, customers that can't use it. So here's some of the questions that they pinged us about directly when they were wanting to start using open source software before we even had some solutions that was built. So the very first question was license issues. And this is also a really good primer for anybody that's hoping to get their apps, maybe distributed and put out by an Amazon or a Google or something like that. There's a lot of questions that came up with the license. What does GPL mean? Also, what happens if that developer, 6 months from now, or 12 months from now, or 2 weeks from now, decides to change the license? Will I be able to still use that software or not? Obviously, we had to talk and address and answer those questions. The next question that came up that hit pretty hard was, is documentation available? Because I'm personally guilty of this. I'm personally guilty of writing something, putting it on GitHub, and the next thing that I have zero documentation. I know my API, nobody else knows my API, and if I don't provide good, solid documentation, then nobody else is really going to use it. And even a project that I contributed to recently, I did more work in the readme.md than I did on the actual project, because people just didn't know how to do it, and they were just looking for ways on how to get this working in their application. Another question that our customers came to us and asked is, will I get answers to my questions? So I've got a problem. So thankfully, with GitHub and with other places like that, there's issues that you can report. And some of them, they have forums set up, and they have different types of user voice, different levels of interaction. And hopefully, if your project grows big enough, that other people in the community will do it, instead of maybe just the one developer or the two developers that was actually building that open source library. Testing was another very big one. So some of the major projects that they had pulled down and they had looked at, and they were trying to discover, is this project well tested? There's no unit test, that's in it. Thankfully, Xcode started adding the testing framework by default to your projects. Before that, in earlier versions like Xcode 4, you kind of left out to your own, to do that. Thankfully, we started seeing that, and it's funny is that in some of the newer iOS 7 projects that's out there, you'll see that the testing folder exists, but there isn't necessarily anything test that's actually been written. So then the other question was, what additional development time is needed to adjust this project to my needs? So this also is another one that hit home, because there was always, and we've always found this ourselves, this is why we have to fork different repos. We find that there is a feature X and Y that we really want and we love. We want to add feature Z to the project. So with companies and with our corporations and clients that we used, that was one of the big issues was, I'm going to have to learn their API, and then once I learn their API, I have to add on their feature. And then finally was government, healthcare, banking applications. In my past, I've spent a lot of time working in the banking industry. And in the banking industry, as advocates for open source software, I was rejected number of times. And I don't know if anybody's worked in the banking industry, but if you work in software development and you actually visit the bank, they literally lock you into a room, and they have a camera on you, and they're recording your screen as you type. And they are scared of any sort of open source software because they believe you're going to steal all of their credit card and hack all of the world, kind of like the old days of Kevin Mitnick, where they wouldn't allow him to be anywhere near a computer, thinking that he was going to cause some nuclear explosion. So it's the same sort of thing. So this is real world stuff that we saw as we started developing this out. So how did it end? It ended with them pointing and saying that they wanted us to be responsible for all of these sorts of things. And if you work in any sort of company, obviously, like I said, we do a lot more than UI components, but UI components is one of the things that we've worked on extensively, that you'll find that people really don't want to do things, or especially Fortune 500 companies. They want that go-to person. They want 24/7 phone support. They want somebody bugging. They want somebody that they can bug at any moment, any time of the day. And they also want to be able to provide support tickets. And if they want something made, they just tell you, we want this, and we allow our community to vote up those options. And when the community votes up something all the way up to the top, then that means that great, we're going to do it. And if it's downvoted, then we know that it's something that's not of a very high priority. So that was it. We decided we're building a chart, folks. So just like Legos, we did the typical things that most people would do. We went to our whiteboard, and we obviously examined and compared all of the different versions of charts that people were building and things that people were doing. And we looked to see how we could actually make that better. So we kind of started off with a quote that is this one. An ideal visualization should not only communicate clearly, but stimulate viewer engagement and attention. And this is by Villegas and Wattingberg. And when I kind of broke this down, I kind of broke it down in developer terms, and it was chart should be pretty, API should be simple. So that was the developer in me that was talking. So from there, we obviously started looking at a simple API. And so in this example, this is an example of maybe in a view did load event. You could see we had just our TK chart, and we were just kind of newing that up using an auto resizing mask. And then to the self.view, we were adding the subview of the chart. Then we needed to just add some random data in there. So we added in 10 different data points. And then this line is very important actually, because this kind of keys in for what we were aiming to do with the simple API. And this was chart, add series, TK chart line series, alloc, init with items, and then just our random data that you can see that we generated here. But one thing you'll notice, and I'll show you this in just a second, is that the TK chart line series, we wanted this to be flexible enough and smart enough that the data that's provided could produce various types of data, different types of charts without the customer really even having to learn anything else. They could just change this TK chart line series to maybe something like TK chart scatter series. Obviously, there's other things that people wanted. They would need things like animations. And animations is something that we'll talk about in momentarily as well. And so we wanted to turn on animations very easily by just setting that to a yes. And then by default, the title.hidden is yes. We turn that to no. And we just give it a title.text, and then I just named this one just getting started, because I'm very, very creative sometimes. So with that being said, you were able to generate this chart. So this is a very simple chart, very simple line chart. But one thing that you'll notice is that it's using the iOS 7 it kind of blends in with iOS 7, and iOS 7 is what we actually decided to target our chart with. And iOS 7, obviously, if you watch the keynote, then you can see how many, right now it's dominating as far as users. So let's look at a quick video that I have of this chart. So from here, you can see I'm adding a bar series. Here's one where I'm adding in an area series. So this is, again, the same data. I can add in the pie series, another one on the scatter series, and you saw the chart appear. So obviously, by the magic of Camtasia and fast forwarding, I was able to get rid of a lot of my typing and build process for you to see this in a short amount of time. But this was kind of what we aimed out for, at least with our V1 or our first beta version. So that covered the most requested chart types. So that covered approximately about 8 or so different types of charts. So at this point, we were thinking we're done, right? So yeah, we got the big fat no there. So with them saying no, and with us understanding that, hey, we're going to need a lot more to do. So we started looking at the different types of axis types. So we took a look already at numerical, categorical, date and time previously. But one of the things that we hadn't looked at was multiple axes and the negative values. So taking a look at those, multiple axes is very important. So you have like a bar chart, you have a line and a scatter that you probably want to plot on the same sort of graph. This was a very big request because there's various industries that use this sort of thing. Negative values is great, for instance, if we wanted to show some sort of sales data. Hopefully your sales data doesn't look like this unless maybe you're a $100 company, maybe a lemonade stand or something. But those are also 2 other access types that was requested by our users, and we implemented those. Then we get into animations. Animations was something that we, as I said before, we decided to target iOS 7 right off the bat. So, but we also had a lot of users that were coming from 6 and that were still very familiar with core animations. So we allow people to use either core animations or UI kit dynamics. So with that being said, here is an example of a custom animation, and I really hate that I had to turn this into orange for you to see it, simply because I like to keep the color. If you're like me, you like the syntax highlighting to be correct. But if you handle our TK chart delegate protocol and you implement this chart animation for series with state and rec method, then you can perform these custom animations. And this is just a custom animation that we used internally for some of our testing. UIKit Dynamics. How many people's playing with UIKit Dynamics right now in their apps? So yeah, I've seen people obviously using it a ton in games and other things of that nature. Thinking about it in charts, yeah. So that's something that we started playing with in charts as well, and a lot of people were wanting it. So here's just another example where we just decided to use the collision behavior, a gravity behavior, and then a dynamic item behavior. And then we added all of those behaviors, and this is an example of both of those in action. So this is the custom animations. So yeah, and then you can click on the animate button. And if we go back, we can go to the UIKit dynamic, and you can kind of see some elasticity there. And then if you wanted to, you could apply the gravity. Now, this is just the guys that built the stuff that, decided to create some animations. We've been working with a lot of other people that have created some animations that I would rather demo a lot of the times than some of the stuff that we do, but a lot of it allowed our customers to really extend and play and really push, especially UIKit Dynamics. So, annotations. Annotations was obviously another big piece of the puzzle. Abandoned line, balloon, layer, view, cross line, custom, and trackball. And you can kind of see here the cross line. This was a heavy request. Balloon for like a certain threshold that has been reached. And also we had the casual things that people come to love and expect, such as, pinch and zoom, if you wanted to do that. So at the end of the day, we really wanted our clients to have a flexible chart. And right now we're on another version of it, and we believe that we've achieved that. And so another example of a custom chart that you could build if you really wanted to build it would be this one. And so yeah, so we're kind of getting a little crazy here. So we've got everything from the unicorns to Sasquatch to to ponies. But this is all the sort of, this is another example of just some of the ways that you could kind of customize this chart. And we found that people enjoyed that, enjoyed the flexibility of that, and we've really been happy to start seeing this in various applications, from student applications to a line of business to Fortune 500 companies. So, but we're really not done yet. And I know by visiting enough iOS conferences that it doesn't count as a presentation if I don't at least have one picture of Steve Jobs in here. So I've got my picture, and so now this technically counts. So the next pain point that our customers came to us with was our data sync framework. So with our data sync framework, this is something, and I'm just going to kind of read through this. So this was going to make sure that the changes that was made to our customers' data is saved while offline, and it's synced to devices and the cloud once an internet connection is available. So we're thinking, wait, what? So we have one device, for example, and say they jump on an airplane, they're typing in some notes, and all of a sudden, it's time to take off, and it's hard for us to go more than like 15 minutes without an internet connection. And so they type in some notes, or maybe they work on their application, their line of business application, do some data entry, whatnot. They land, and then there's a whole bunch of people back at the office that may be using iPads, for example. And those iPads, they would obviously need that same sort of data synced over to that. So what we used SQLite. We created our own wrapper around SQLite. And then we also used the back-end services, which was part of the Telerik platform that I was talking about. So here is a quick example that I decided that I would show you. And this is kind of called our ideas mill. And you can see we are very creative with some of the names here. So iOS 222, and we've got 223, 224. So these two screens are identically alike. This is actually my own phone using Reflector, and this is obviously the iOS simulator. So if I go ahead and I show you kind of what's happening here, we can see that we went ahead and we type in a new idea, and again, we can fast forward, thankfully, through me typing. And I'm just calling this new idea, and I'm going to go ahead and add a new comment. This comment's going to be love it. And so after I've added the comment, I went back to my main screen, and we can see I did 225. Now we refresh on the simulator, for example, and you can see I did 225 has been listed there, as well as it over on our phone itself. So this was just one example of the data sync framework that we put into place. And so you notice that this is now not necessarily the frame UI components anymore, but it's more of frameworks that's built in to make things life easier, and especially life easier with SQLite, which has kind of always been a pain point. So this cured a second problem that a lot of line of business enterprise developers had, but then there was also a third one. And the third one was something called app feedback. And we all want great ratings in our store. So with app feedback, you could take a screenshot and you could provide an option for them to basically pin this red circle. And you could provide a comment and the developer would respond to it. So it's best to go ahead and just take a look at it first. So this is an example of one of our examples applications. And as you can see here, there's no examples actually being shown. So there's a couple of ways that you can trigger this dialog. You can actually, there's shake gestures. You can also talk to it. You can, even if you would like to, you can click on, you can use an action sheet like I'm using here. So with this, I can click on settings. I can type in my name. Or I continue to send it anonymously. Finally, I have touched on where I'm expecting the examples, and it's put the red dot in the middle, and then I've typed in something, and then I hit done. So what happens now? So now, again, the developer on the back-end side, he takes a look at it, and he sees, here's the screenshot, here's where they've located the red dot, and we're starting to post a comment. And the comment is, they will arrive soon. Thank you for your report. And they could simply select post. And this is the two messages. So you can see that from the first example, where are the examples? He waited a whole minute before he said please again. So from there, back to the application, you can go to your feedback, and you can go to open. You can see our June 2nd date, and you can see the two comments, and then our name of collaboration tests, and they will arrive soon. Thank you for your report, and the comment has been listed. Has been listed in here. So these were three of the main pain points that we saw line of business and enterprise developers that was hitting. It was, obviously these were real world examples, and we decided to address those, and so far we've had very good success with those. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple of resources. If you want to learn a little bit more about some of the stuff that we're doing, it's at telerik.com/iOS-UI. If you have an iPad, you can just search for Telerik Corp, and you can download the examples application from there. We also have an iPhone application that we have not distributed to the store just yet, just because we're waiting to add more information. But then also, we've also been playing with Swift, and we are using Swift already with our charts, because we're expecting developers, especially Apple developers, to be jumping on Swift as quickly as we have. I know that I was actually in my hotel room originally using my MiFi device to grab the bits. I had to stop that very quickly because that was going to rack up a lot of charges. but thankfully AltConf will let you grab those bits right down the street, so you don't even have to download them. So there's a URL that's listed there. The easiest way, if you want to find this later on, is through blogs.telerik.com/iOS team. And so before I say thank you, I wanted to list my contact information. Obviously, I'm on Twitter at mbcrump, and I have my email address here. And I know a lot of people watch the live stream and they watch the recorded version, and I would be more than happy to chat with you and have more conversation about some of the things that we've have been doing, things that we've been seeing, and just things that I've been learning as an iOS developer. So with that being said, thank you very much, and thank you for having me at the conference. I do appreciate it. So I think I used most of my time. Do we have time for Q&A?
Yep. If you have a question, though, please wait to get the mic to ask it.
Yes. So does anybody have any questions about maybe some of the things that we were, our thought process as we were kind of building some of this out? Or are you going to be shy and just wait like most people do, and as soon as I walk out the corner, everybody comes in and is like, hey dude, check this out. Any questions, anybody? All right, you're going to leave me empty-handed. All right, that's okay. I love you guys and girls. You take care.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back at 10:30.
A lot of different things, but mobile has been a focus that we've really been pushing on here lately. So obviously there's three massive ways that people are using to write applications: web, hybrid, to native applications. From web applications, we've been building and working on, people typically use responsive web design or mobile optimized web pages. And we've been working with ASP.NET Ajax. We've been working with our Kendo UI framework, which is a framework that consists of HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS3. And then also we've had a hybrid solution. The hybrid solution consisted of App Builder, which would
Hi again. Our next speaker is an iOS developer at Telerik. He's a coder, blogger, speaker, and author on various mobile technologies. Michael Crump.
First off, I would like to thank each and every one of you for coming out today, and obviously the organizers for putting on this absolutely incredible conference. Can we give them a hand first? This takes a lot of work to put together. Okay, so the title of the presentation is obviously Enriching the iOS SDK, but also there's kind of a subtitle that we have as well. And that's kind of what our customers ask us to build. So I'll get into that in detail in just a moment. But I'm Michael Crump. Again, I work at Telerik, and I work on pretty much everything that we do that involves mobile platforms. So before we dive into the story, I did want to tell you a little bit about the company, because as I've been here, I've met a lot of people that talked about Telerik and was familiar with Telerik and what we were doing. So we've been known to do a lot